Well, welcome back. That is Linda Oliver, the mother of the defendant who's on trial for his life now at sentencing. I've got three awesome guests with me today. I'm really excited. I'll be here with you from 12 to 3. Get into that chat room. You guys are really answering and asking some great questions. Hey, Joseph Morgan Scott, my friend, just from Monday, forensic expert, a death investigator, worked in ME's office, coroner's office, is a professor out of Jacksonville State University, written numerous articles and books. This is the real deal. Joseph, welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me, Bob.
Okay, and my other good friend, I got some crew here today, Charles Mittelstadt from Defense Mind. He's from Atlanta, Georgia. He's a criminal defense investigator, a security expert from the Mittelstadt firm. Hey, this guy's representing and helping out defense lawyers with Fortune 100 companies, politicians, athletes, entertainers. He's doing it all. Welcome to the show, Charles. Good to have you back.
Thank you, Bob. And I'm also happy to be on with JSM, my man.
I know, man. This is some team here. And then I've got a very dear friend of mine. We started as baby prosecutors together in the Hudson County Prosecutor's Office. We tried lots of cases. Then we went out into the defense world. I became the county prosecutor. He still did defense. And here he is at the Law&Crime Network, Mike Koribanics from the Koribanics Law Firm. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you very much, Bob. Always a pleasure to see an old friend, and very honored to be here with you today.
Yeah, we're one of 250 certified Supreme Court trial attorneys in New Jersey. We're very proud of that because there's 98,000 lawyers in New Jersey. God help us. Hey, guys, we got a lot to cover here. Roy Oliver so far has put on an anemic sentencing defense in my mind, except for Mom. I believe Mom is going to resonate with these jurors. Let me start with Mike first, having been in the courtroom and put on mitigating and aggravating information, both as a prosecutor and defense lawyer. Mike, what do you think about Mom?
This was the only person so far worth having on the stand. She's given us a little bit about Oliver. She's not trying to say he's not guilty. She's just giving us some insight into his background, his military training, things that sort of will make this jury think that maybe this is a bad act by a guy who's really not that bad, but this is the first person who really has given us insight into the good things this guy has done in his life.
I think that's an excellent point. And we got a lot to cover about this military piece, which I think is important. Charles, I want to flip to you real quick. You assist criminal defense attorneys in their investigations all the time, which also includes helping out with regard to mitigation and sentencing. What do you think so far of the evidence that you're hearing? And do you think Mom so far has been the best witness for him?
No question, Bob. I had the opportunity to listen to the other two witnesses, one being a police officer, the other being a neighbor. Neither really offered anything of value in terms of humanizing him, in terms of offering anything that would be truly considered mitigating. Mom here is really humanizing him, giving the jury background on him as a child, his ambitions in terms of employment, his military service, even his reluctance to participate in bayonet training and possibly take a life. So she certainly is a very, very good witness for him.
Okay, Joseph Morgan Scott, real quick, 20 seconds or less. Forensically speaking, is there a difference between looking at an investigation from a police officer shooting versus military action, which are completely different fields? And do you think that that may be one of the reasons that this shooting occurred?
Yeah, there is a difference between the two. Keep in mind, with military, you're always advancing. You're advancing on a target in order to negate that target. Policing is a bit more defensive in the way you approach a threat.
Yeah, you know, there is definitely a lot out there. I mean, no disrespect to anybody, but in our police shooting protocols, when we investigated them, there was this issue with respect to military and whether that is problematic in some regard, especially people coming back from a war zone. Hey, Law&Crime Network, we got it all going. We got great guests here. We're going to be breaking down this and a lot of other trials right after the break. We'll be back. We're there. There's Mom. She's giving some, you know, what a mom would do when she takes the witness stand. We basically heard he's a wonderful father, a good person. Consider me and the son, Tom, who has special needs, and his income guidance and support. I'm here with my friend Mike Koribanics, former prosecutors together. And Mike, we were talking offline that I can't help but think that the prosecutor may get up and say, hey, it's too bad, pointing to the father of the dead young 15-year-old boy, that he won't have the love and support of his father. It may be one of the areas. What do you think?
I think that this prosecutor is going to do it. I know you've done it. I've seen people do it. And it's such a dangerous road to go down, to ask to have sympathy on that level when there's a murder of a child. That's dangerous.
Right, right.
Because there's a victim's family there.
Right. So, and Joseph Morgan Scott, we were talking before about the difference between the offensive military piece and the more defensive posture of police officers. I'm wondering, I don't know yet, maybe others do. To me, what I've normally seen is psychological experts that are getting up there to talk about how sometimes, especially if you have PTSD, there can be a switch that flips and sometimes you do something. To me, this would explain the thing that the jury wants to know, which is the why in the case. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, the why is the big part here, Bob. Did the switch get flipped back? You know, he's hearing, we heard on the tape the other day when you and I were on, we heard this expressive change in inflection in his voice. Remember, we heard the repeat of those gunshot wounds that went gunfire. They went flying out of the house. And in that set of circumstances, did the switch get flipped? And I think that that's something they're going to have to strongly emphasize in this particular case.
Yes, Joseph Scott Morgan, you're forensic expert. You've done ME stuff, coroner stuff. Charles Mittelstadt is with us as well. He's a defense investigator. Charles, you work intimately with defense attorneys. What would you be wanting to see or suggest to them as the evidence that's going to help mitigate this really bad case?
Well, again, the evidence of, some sort of psychological explanation, and again, as we just mentioned, relating to some PTSD, of what I just heard from Mom, there was a couple of things that I thought, the fact that she pointed out that he was raised as with a single mom, and that his father was in custody in prison the entire time. I don't find that particularly helpful, given that this jury is the one that found him guilty, and she's sitting there basically saying he turned out fine, right? He's a good human being. He's a great father. She kind of put herself sideways with her daughter-in-law by suggesting that he's the more responsible of the two parents. So I don't think that was particularly helpful, again, given that this is the jury that found him guilty. So, but I do think some explanation for them to understand, as Joseph Scott Morgan just said, how this switch flipped and whether it has flipped back.
Right, right. Hey, Mike, what do you think about that? I mean, as a lawyer, how do you want to position this real quick in 10 seconds or less in terms of what's the best witness?
The best witness is going to be Oliver apologizing for the actions and showing some sort of sense of responsibility. I don't think you play for an appeal in this case and worry about that. I think you play for mitigation of your sentence.
Right, right, yeah. Listen, guys, this is a really tough case. It's a 15-year-old innocent, good kid that's been killed. Very compelling testimony. Law&Crime Network. We're in the Roy Oliver sentencing proceeding. We're going to go to a break, and we'll be back on the other end with our great guests. Well, welcome back. That's Mom testifying on behalf of the defendant. I'm with Mike Koribanics, Charles Mittelstadt, and Joseph Scott Morgan. Guys, I think the prosecutor did a very effective, direct, and clean approach. Her demeanor to a mom who's fighting for her son was appropriate. She wasn't over the top. But I think the last two things that she brought out, that just like we talked about before, that now the victim's parents are deprived of the privilege of their kid. And then, to me, a very good one, which we've actually used, Mike, before in cases, is that, in summations, to say that at least the kids can see the father in jail, but the victim's father will never be able to see his son. And she ended on that high note, that crescendo. I thought she did a good job. Mike, what do you think?
I think a lot of young prosecutors should watch that cross-examination, because it hit the points and it got out. And it really showed that they're not both living the same hell. Oliver has his life. He's gonna have it. That family lost a 15-year-old child. That hell is a lot hotter.
Okay, and Joseph Morgan, we were talking before about the forensics, and the last time that you were on, we talked a lot about science versus the emotional and sizzle in cases. It wasn't so much sizzle as it was a profound and direct hit at the heart of the prosecution's case, or the defense case, if you will, that you've got something left, they've got nothing. Did you think that was effective?
Yeah, I think that it was. And back to your point of them not beating this woman up on the stand, I think that was highly effective in in my opinion, because she is going to be losing her son. Granted, not to the degree with which this young man's life was taken. And that has to be emphasized. I found it interesting that the mother did, in fact, acknowledge that they would be living through a living hell.
Yeah, and Charles Mittelstadt, you have experience in working, as I said before, with defense teams. The way I've seen this done is a really good psychological profile that we talked about before, getting social workers who could talk very intimately about the family history, the background, in order, as I was saying before, to get to the why of something, because while in the end, the mother says she disagrees with the verdict, and Diana 421 in our chat room noted, and I think she's probably right about this, is that this is probably not a great thing to say to the jury. I disagree with what you did, but let's get to more better witnesses that are professionals here. Is that what you would be doing with your defense team on those high-profile cases you handle?
Yes, exactly, Bob. I mean, I've had the opportunity to work with mitigation specialists, and there are investigators who essentially do what I do, but their sole focus is on the mitigation. They don't really deal with the guilt-innocence phase. They only deal with the mitigation phase, and they're almost sort of kind of counselor types. They're very touchy-feely, and they really are very dedicated, and they invest themselves in trying to understand every little detail of a defendant's life from cradle to this point, to present day, really, so that the jury can truly understand how we got here and some of the factors in their life that may have influenced their actions. But yes, absolutely, a psychological profile and professional healthcare, mental health folks are very, very effective in getting that point across in a unbiased way based upon their clinical approach to their work and their observations and findings.
Right, and Mike, we work cases all the time, and mitigation, we start from the day the client, as defense attorneys, comes through the door, both to help negotiate the case as well as at sentencing, so that we're not behind the curve. Hey, Law and Crime Network, we got great guests. We're going to go to a break. We're going to come back on the other end with more Law and Crime. Welcome back to the Law and Crime Network. I'm here with some great experts, and one of them is Mike Koribanics, an old friend. Actually, just a little anecdotal story. Mike, one time in the hallway, had a file in his hand and said to me, "Hey, Bob, have you tried a case?" when we were baby prosecutors? And I said, "No." He handed me the file and said, "There's your jury. Go try the case." So I was doing jury selection while I was trying to read up on the case. You got my career started, actually, with that, and I appreciate that.
Well, I'm glad the statute of limitations is run on that, Bob, because there are other supervisors who wouldn't have allowed us to do that. But
no, I was always appreciated. Got my start in that. But listen, on this case, Mike, you've been here at the Law and Crime Network since the early morning, listening to these mitigation experts in the Roy Oliver sentencing proceeding, all the way up until Mom right now. What's your overall feeling about what you're seeing in terms of how the defense is presenting this case, where the jury can give a wildly huge discretion as to what the sentence is going to be?
I got to be honest, Bob, I was a little surprised because I thought there was really no meat to it. I think you were right, as the other experts were speaking about. There was nobody there with any credentials that came in who could explain this. It was really just, it just seems like they're going after quantity as opposed to quality. There's nobody to say this is why this person acted this way. It's almost like, getting letters. These letters mean nothing unless the person could give some insight. You're only going to call people who think you're a nice guy, so nobody's going to think that's going to be a shock. But there was nobody who gave any insight, and I think it was a problem, and I think they're going to have a problem. There's more yet to come, but my mantra through the day is the only one who can really save the day here is Oliver getting on that stand, looking at that jury, and saying, I take full responsibility. I'm sorry for what I've done. And I think maybe that may ring some sort of compassion in them. But as it stands now, I don't think the needle's moving.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the jury is essentially going to do, Mike, what we as prosecutors used to do before we got to trial, which is balance deterrence and justice for the victim's family, but by the same token, how much is enough in order to accommodate all that. And that's a really, really tough thing to give to ordinary folks that aren't involved in the criminal justice system. It's hard for us many times as prosecutors to even understand what would be appropriate. So I think they've got a tough job ahead of them.
Absolutely, and I don't think they have much guidance, like you said, and that's a problem.
Yeah, it's one of the odd things is that the jury is not really given a lot of data when they go in there. So, we'll have to see where we go with that. So, Mike Koribanics, I know that you have to go. Koribanics Law Firm, certified criminal trial attorney in New Jersey, a great friend of mine. We've handled a lot of matters together, and it's been an honor and a privilege to be on with you, Mike. Welcome to the network. And, folks, we are going to move into a quick deluge for a minute and outside what we're doing right now. And we're going to come back on the other end because we still have Joseph Scott Morgan and Charles Mittelstadt, who are excellent experts that assist defense attorneys. They have a tremendous amount of experience. And we're going to come back on the other end with more law and more crime.